Hey, Kelly, we're just starting. Oh, boy. Sounds like there's a tractor in your living room.
All right. So if one of us we'll mute each individually for just a few minutes, we'll read the question, then we can discuss it. All right, so we're talking about ethnic secession. I can't even say the word right, is a major trend in Europe. Recently, Scotland voted against seceding from the United Kingdom, while the Basque separatists continue to fight in Spain. If you look at that map they were showing you, if everybody were to secede, there would be 40 new nations created. And so they were talking about now we're supposed to pick one of the movements and we were supposed to do some outside research on it. And I looked at two people. You look at Europe? I looked at Palestinians because they've been fighting for a long time, and they're, to me, a form of militant secession. And I actually asked Sister Aki, is that how you say her name? At our review of the exam tonight, and she said yes, when they get to the point where they're fighting and warring, that is a form of militant. It's the Palestinians that are seeking their own sovereignty. Oof. I have a hard time with those silly words, but anyhow, they want to be able to rule themselves, make their own decisions, and be an independent nation. And they want to have their own infrastructure where they make their own decisions based on their religious beliefs. Is that what everybody else got out of that?
And it's too bad, though, that a situation has to get to that point where they have to use such drastic measures as militantism and terrorism and, force like that.
The struggle comes over some sort of need to have a control over resources of some sort. And it was interesting in the exam tonight, in the review, Sister Aki was telling us that in Alaska, they could actually do their own thing and have some control over things because they have their own natural resources in that of oil. I'm sure Palestinians would have that same kind of control over oil.
Well, I was looking into the Basque Spanish situation, and I wasn't aware that fight has been going on since 1959. I mean, that's a long time, and they're fighting over wind and turbine and kind of solarish natural energy kind of stuff. So there's something there for everybody to fight over.
Just a minute, I'm plugging in. All right. Yes, and when I was in the military, actually, one of my military roommates his name was Manuel Irusta, and he was Basque, and he came here as a 2-year-old. So it was kind of cool reading about that. And I actually named my son Joshua Manuel. He's named after my military roommate. So, all right. Do they deserve to be an autonomous country? Why or why not? Well, if every group that was wanting to be autonomous was given autonomy, then there would be, you have to create their own monetary system, it's just a lot of things that have to happen. And Scotland, I think, made their wise decision in staying part of the United Kingdom. I know here in Colorado, after the election, the northern part of the state wanted to secede from the southern part of the state. I mean, our state is very strangely polarized. The Republicans live in the north and the Democrats live in the south, and so they wanted to have North and South Colorado, if you can believe that. We actually voted to secede from and to have our own state in the northern part. It was interesting. It did not pass, but anyhow, 51 states instead of 50. That's another flag on another star on the flag and all that good stuff. But anyhow, that's the issue with when they want to separate. There's a lot of, you have to be able to govern yourself. You have to be able to provide for yourself. That's where the natural resources or the resource or something you have that you can sell comes in. And then it really doesn't make sense for every little group of people to have their own sovereign nation, in my opinion, but the Scottish may think different. But they voted to stay in the United Kingdom, which was interesting. And then hit on that. Does anybody else have anything to add to that section of this, where the Europeans, and I use Palestine as the Palestinians and Palestine as my example. Do we feel like we need to discuss any more on that? Because
well, you brought up a good topic too, talking about North and South Colorado. What about Puerto Rico? You know, that's been a territory of the United States, just on the fringe of statehood. But you would think that they would be eager to jump on board with that to get the protection of the United States government, to get all the state funds and, you know, for natural disasters and, you know, all that. So I wonder, I'm just curious why Puerto Rico has been hanging on the fringe of statehood. Is that up to the Puerto Ricans? Is that up to the federal government? How does that work?
I think it's interesting that you brought that one up. Are you going to go?
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I think part of that is they just want to preserve their culture, because it's like once we add them into the United States, it's like a lot of rules and regulations will be put into place. A lot more officials will be in and out. They'll have their own leaders, and a lot of things will change, and they'll probably go from what they are to more industrial. And I think they're trying to avoid that.
And they have applied for statehood, and it hasn't passed, either in Puerto Rico or in the United States. Both places have kind of shot it down, which is interesting. And I think exactly what it is the population in Puerto Rico, exactly what you said. They don't want to lose their own personal culture, their own personal identity. It's kind of an interesting thing, because Carlos was one of my buddies from Puerto Rico in the Navy too. I had a lot of Navy buddies.
Well, but in watching the video about that square mile in Georgia, that's one of the most diverse square miles on the planet. And there seems to be now a trend where maintaining and retaining one's ethnic diversity and culture while in the United States is very popular. So I wonder if the Puerto Ricans are going to revisit that.
It would be interesting. And we were talking in the United States, there's other groups that would like to visit their sovereign nations and go back to the way things were. One of those would be a couple of the Navajo tribe, and then some of the Hawaiian folks also were listed in that group of people that would like to maintain their cultures. All right. The next part was to talk about China and the multiple ethnic groups that are there. What'd you say, Kelly? Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on a little bit to the other questions that we were supposed to talk about. Was in China, where we were reading article about and I'm not even going to attempt to say it, the different cultural groups that are there. I know that I can say the Han pretty easily, but the Uruguayans, I don't know. And then there's the Hun, and what was the other one? The third one, I can't remember it right off the top of my head. Hold on, I'm going to scroll down because I think it's in here. But two of the groups remain mostly in the farming communities, and 80 to 90% of their people.
Can you guys hear me?
There you are, Kelly.
Now.
Oh, I think I might be on a delay.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, no, I'm not.
You sound like you're in the Wild West, but I think we just heard a gunfight at your backyard.
I have nothing happening at my house.
That is, you know what? Okay, I'm done. It's been a long day. That's really strange.
It's clear
Yeah,
now.
we can hear you.
For me, it was. So were you going to add something for us there, Kelly?
No, it's okay. I tried to earlier and you guys could hear me, so it's fine.
Oh, we can hear you now. So if you want to, it's a good time to go.
I don't know if any of you guys have taken the class on Pakistan yet.
Oh, no.
Have not.
Very interesting because they created Pakistan where, part of went to India and somewhere else, I can't remember. It really displaced some cultural and religious areas. It kind of cut along a certain left Pakistan, not resources that it survive. There's kind of different spots in it now. Again, 4 times because moved to be like around their culture. And the funny thing is I had to do a whole report on it. But actually support themselves. Like they were doing better when they're and they didn't want that. And they wanted to be these separate countries. Mm-hmm. Falling apart. They don't know how to govern themselves. People are getting assassinated or impeached, and it's just like a lot of corruption, still a lot of poverty, resources. And so it's funny, all of these countries, that's a huge factor. Wanting to leave was Belgium, the people that the Finnish people, kind of separating because of language. Separate I might be getting these backwards. Low income part of the state, the whole lower half. You'd have the rich people and the poor people, and how are those poor people going to be able to govern themselves? Money and resources.
Well, that makes you wonder too if in this case with Pakistan, say Afghanistan, if Pakistan broke off from Afghanistan, and did they let the Pakistanis have their country only to be able to invade them and subject them to the former rule? I mean, then you got that whole can of worms.
It is interesting. All right. So when we were talking, so now we'll go back and we'll finish up the China stuff because we have to answer these questions on this piece of paper so that I can turn it in. And I'll send it to everybody after I get done. I'll type it out and I'll send it to everybody so that everybody has the same thing. the poverty and the illiteracy rate causes the people of these UYGURS folks in China to not be able to have the autonomy that the Hans have, the people that speak Mandarin, and they have the opportunity to go to college, and they live in the big cities, and there's a lot of wealth in that area and power. If they didn't live at, when they move into the city, the larger, more dominant class tends to push them out, and they tell them that they're not welcome, and it's very much like what happens here with some of the different ethnic groups where people are treated based on outward appearance. Mm-hmm. And I read the whole article. It was kind of interesting. And one woman, she said the landlord told her she wasn't welcome there. Like, once they get there, they try to get rid of them. It's really sad. Number 3 says, the United States is a home to a wide variety of ethnic groups, including Italians, Irish, Japanese, Mexicans, Native Hawaiians, Navajos, African Americans, and many more. Which ethnic group do you think would be most likely to become a secessionist minority, and why?
I feel, can you guys hear me, or am I on a delay again?
I can hear you, Kelly.
I feel like it would probably be the Native Hawaiians. That is the options there. Part of that is having your own piece of land, and I feel like the Hawaiians are the only ones that like area. So to succeed from, they have their own land, they have their own resources, and their culture separate from us, would be the only one that probably could.
I think the Navajo have tried, and they haven't succeeded, because exactly what you said, they're part of the continental United States already, and even though they have their own little section that they've been reduced down to, and they keep put them on different spots and reservations, I just don't think that they have their own. If you go into to the reservations, they have the Navajo Nation, and they have all their own police and everything, and they get to make some of their own rules, but they still end up being kind of policed somewhat by the government too. So I think you're right. And the resources that are around for them aren't as vast as they are for the Hawaiian, Native Hawaiians.
Yeah, I have to change my mind entirely based on what Kelly said, because in California, where I live, there's a high Hispanic Mexican environment. But I mean, bilingual, billboards and radio and music and everything is very, very prevalent here in California. But I was looking at it more as sheer numbers. And I thought, well, okay, the Native Americans, they were always warring between tribes. But that is true, but this is just referring to one nation, the Navajo Nation. But I really have to agree with what Kelly said, changing my mind, that the Native Hawaiians are in a perfectly good place to secede. They've got the land, they've got the resources, they've got industry, they got tourism. There's people always want to go to Hawaii. So I think that's a kind of a dark horse winner, Kelly. Way to go.
Didn't they try to succeed too in the beginning when they were trying to make Hawaii a state?
I don't know.
History
just to add to what you said about.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, I was just going to add to what you said about and how there is, I also live in California, there is a high population of Mexicans, but the only problem there is aren't even U.S. citizens. So
yeah, that's true.
Part of the nation. So they can't fight for the land. I don't know.
And the illegality of them being here, Kelly, as you know,
war
that goes off into a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I mean, like if there's a ton of people like from Japan, Hawaii, and they want to take that, and why?
Yeah.
So the second part of that question is which ethnic group?
Yes, it does. I feel like it would happen for that their majority of them aren't U.S. citizens.
Yeah, but they're treated like it. End of discussion.
They already have their own land and area to go to together.
Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox if you get off your soapbox.
Yeah.
So the next part of that question, and this is the last part that we're supposed to talk about tonight, is which ethnic group would be least likely to become a secessionist minority and why? And we're looking again at the Italians, the Irish, the Japanese, the Mexicans, the Navajo, the African Americans, and we could name somebody else. In my mind, I'm trying to think of who would be the least likely. I don't see very many of them actually being able to do it.
Other than the Hawaiians.
And the Alaskans. I mean, you could have the Eskimos that could do it. But I think that if we were looking at people on the mainland, I mean, the Navajo have tried. I don't know that the African Americans have ever really tried, or any of these other places that came here to. I mean,
they had wars back in the day.
They did.
The South and the North, they tried to, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
many,
true.
yeah. Yeah. But
kind of a race war.
Yep. What about
I feel like the Japanese might be the least likely because they're like the lower in the populations. Like they move here more for a better life than anything or for economic opportunities. They really don't have much motivation to want to take over land and to become their own state when they moved, usually to get away from some sort of oppression going on back then.
I agree with you, Raquel, and I could say the same thing for the Italian and the Irish.
Well, the Irish did have a big movement at one point in New York, and they had their own little, and they still have a borough out there and stuff. But when they first started coming over here, they were trying to maintain their people and maintain strength in numbers. So they might have tried. I don't think they would have succeeded either. But I agree with you. I think the Japanese is a good choice.
And they're spread pretty diversely everywhere.
That's true too. Yeah. I think to be any successful at that, there would have to be some conformity, not conformity, some concentration.
All right. And I think I'm going to just slide down, but I believe that was our last question we had to answer. And so if it is, what I'll do is I'll type answers, kind of what I think I heard, and I will post mine and I'll send it out, and everybody can add to it what they feel like they would like to. And that would be good. We can stop the recording at this time and have a closing prayer.